So the whistleblower complained in the fall. The FDA waited till December to act, waited until February to shut the plant down. President Biden wasn't told about it until April. You don't think any of that should have been done more quickly or sooner? You think everything just went exactly how it's supposed to?
To take very seriously that, whoa, guys.
Our camera fell down. Okay.
And inflation, of course, impacts views of the economy at large. So you look at the net economic approval rating that Biden has currently. Look at this, minus 26 points, minus 26. That's tied with Jimmy Carter for the worst in the last 40 plus years. It's awful. Folks do not like the shape of the economy, and they're blaming Democrats.
And my Lord, we're in much more trouble than I ever thought we were.
The Department of Energy has an Energy Information Administration, which is an objective entity that does analysis projecting the prices of gasoline. They say that things might stabilize by the end of this year, but that the price of gas is likely to remain above $4 a gallon.
That's right, bro.
Biden is really long on promises and short on delivery. Imagine if you go to a restaurant and they tout the best thing on the menu, and then all of a sudden when you order it, they say, oh, that's sold out. Like, that's what Biden is doing for a lot of people, especially black people, who he got 90% of them to vote for him, but hasn't passed the George Floyd Policing Act. He's saying the—
You think Biden did it?
No, Biden can use his executive order. He can use different powers. And that's the same thing with this abortion issue, because he can do anything like end the filibuster. But why doesn't Biden want to end the filibuster in order to push this through? Because Biden knows that the filibuster has been used by Democrats 300 times over the last 6 years. Biden knows that Chuck Schumer is one of the people who use the filibuster the most. And so Biden doesn't want to look crazy and lose his election seat and know that he's in the midterms and not really having anything to run on. So
Biden
a lot of
can
people—
end the filibuster by himself?
Yeah, he can sign an executive order to end the filibuster. He actually can.
Huh.
Yeah.
So we were talking about the growing controversy on the Supreme Court draft and all kinds of stuff, and Lindsay wanted to
I want to
clarify.
clarify that Biden can't single-handedly, executive order to end the filibuster.
Busted. Stop it. Get some help.
But it wasn't just the president who got it wrong a year or so ago. I want to play for you what you said about inflation last year. Listen to this.
Is there a risk of inflation? I think there's a small risk, and I think it's manageable. I don't anticipate that inflation is going to be a problem, but it is something that we're watching very carefully.
Was it a mistake, Madam Secretary, to downplay this inflation risk? Did that contribute to the problems we're all seeing right now?
Well, look, I think I was wrong then.
No shit.
About the path that inflation would take. As I mentioned, there have been unanticipated and large shocks to the economy that have boosted energy and food prices and supply bottlenecks that have affected our economy badly that I, at the time, didn't fully understand.
What would you say you do here?
You do not know what you are talking about, quite frankly, and I want to say that officially. You do not know what you are talking about.
Also seeing that in terms of the strength of household balance sheets as well. Savings is up. Debt is down. Bankruptcy filings remain near pre-pandemic lows. Eviction filings are 30% below their pre-pandemic levels. All of these are sources of economic strength from which we can now focus on bringing prices down.
Everything that guy just said is bullshit. Thank you.
I'm sick of seeing people talk about, well, we should do something. No, we should do something. And I don't care, NRA. You got to give that gun up.
How about no?
You can have your other yeehaw guns, whatever you want. The AR-15
has to go.
Is not a hunting gun.
It's a weapon
It is
of war.
not a gun where you're going to go out and shoot your dinner, and you can't have it anymore. I want that AR-15. I want it. And we're going to vote it out, so it's going to not be accessible.
Fuck you.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we remember and we reaffirm freedom is worth the sacrifice. Democracy is not perfect. It's never been good, perfect.
What? God damn it, are you fucking with me?
You don't have to go to hell. You're in hell. This is hell. This is hell. This is hell.
Because democracy basically means government by the people, of the people, for the people. But the people are retarded.
Then strangled them, and finally dismembered their bodies.
Right.
Then do
And homelessness and all that.
And now, the voice you've been waiting for.
There is a secret zone at the center of the world, and its sound is like razors through flesh. I'm here to turn up the volume.
I'm kind of retarded.
Well, obviously the big story this week was the verdict in the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. Just kidding, nobody gives a fuck. I mean, they tried their best to turn that into a media circus like the OJ trial, but a double murder just seems to hold people's attention a little bit more than a case about defamation. Although the bit about defecation was good for a chuckle. When the most interesting part of your story has to do with a literal pile of shit, that's when you know you're lacking in the area of substance. And also good for a chuckle was this story out of Hawaii about this guy who had a fuck BLM license plate, and at the end of last summer some people tipped off the local news station about it and they ran a story, so then the plate got revoked. I guess they approved it not realizing that FCK BLM was something bad. So they ordered him to surrender the plate, and he basically told him to get stuffed, and is still riding around with this symbol of hate. Does anything say first world problems quite like living in a place like Hawaii and complaining about somebody's offensive symbol of hate license plate? And after all, this is a group with a stellar record. It's not like they've ever been investigated for misappropriation of funds, buying multi-million-dollar mansions and paying people hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars for creative consulting and bullshit like that. No, they're just a lovely little charity, and if you say anything bad about them, then you're a fucking white supremacist. This is also the first week of Pride Month. Yay! Where everybody from sports teams to the fucking Marine Corps does their little bit virtue signaling and, well, not on your Middle East or Saudi Arabia account, of course. I mean, they're not that stupid. But for the Western version of their homepages, oh yeah, let's change our logo to rainbow colors. But oh no, the Saudi Arabia one, no. And this flag is looking more and more crowded lately. I mean, holy shit. Apparently just a standard rainbow isn't good enough anymore. Seems like they had to go and add some little bit to represent each of the 58 fucking genders, or however many we have now. Because it's unlimited and you can just make them up at will. It's never gonna stop. Even though it's already gotten to the point where this just looks fucking silly. And then at a gay bar in Dallas on Saturday, there was an event called Drag the Kids to Pride. A drag show where they invited children to get on stage and take part alongside the drag queens. It was billed as a family-friendly event, but you would think that the big neon sign saying, "It's not gonna lick itself," I mean, you could just turn that off for one, but even if that were the case, I would still have a fucking problem with it. There's laws against having kids at any kind of bar for a reason, let alone one where there is adult entertainment happening. The fact that I even have to make such an obvious fucking statement, and that there are people that will actually defend this and go, what's wrong with that? Is a really sad state of affairs. If you brought a small child into a strip club and said, hey, go up to the stripper and shove this dollar in her G-string, would that be a problem, or would that be fucking disgusting? Oh, but because it's somebody in drag, well, then that's okay. I mean, we wouldn't want to be intolerant. It's more important that we all be totally inclusive, right? Even the infamous Ukraine Azov Regiment, you know, those totally not Nazis who just so happen to like swastikas and other Nazi symbols, well, they dropped one of their neo-Nazi symbols on their patch in favor of a LGBT-friendly little unicorn. The hilarious irony being that Ukraine is a country that doesn't even allow same-sex marriage or the same-sex adopting of children. But hey, they've got a unicorn on their patch, so I guess they're all right. And speaking of Ukraine, on Wednesday, President Joey Skidmarks announced that we'll be sending some of our more advanced rocket systems to Ukraine. The HIMARS, or High Mobility Artillery Rocket System, is somewhat of a step up from what they've been using, and is also a little bit better than what the Russians are using on the ground in Ukraine. There are some fears, of course, that these rockets, which can go 50 or so miles, can be used to be shot into Russian territory, and the Russians are warning that if that happens, that they're not gonna retaliate against Ukraine, they're gonna retaliate against the decision makers, basically saying that they were gonna attack NATO countries in retaliation if any of these rockets wander into Russian territory. So even though the Ukrainians have given us assurances that they will not fire these rockets into Russia, I'll actually be surprised if they don't. The Ukrainian military hasn't been doing so hot in the eastern Donbass region, and the thing they really need most is more NATO involvement. So one of these missiles, let's say, accidentally gets fired into Russia, and then Russia retaliates against a NATO country, and boom, they've got exactly what they want for to happen, which is NATO to get more directly involved. Oh, but they assured us they wouldn't do that, right? I guess we'll find out soon enough, but this is exactly the kind of thing that can cause shit to escalate way out of hand really quick. And in gun control news, they are doing their best to use this Texas school shooting to make a full court press. Meanwhile, the whole narrative of what even the fuck happened down there seems to get muddier and muddier the more information that comes out. And more on that after a quick commercial break.
You've got your sunrise, you caught a prize, your mate and your Johnson. Party nights, summer whites, your friends and your Johnson. Rooster tails, water trails, your kids and your Johnson. Saturday nights, distant lights, your girl and your Johnson.
You and your Johnson, a way of life for over 50 years.
Please consider liking, subscribing, sharing this video, or leaving a comment. Because every time you do nothing, Vladimir Putin will shoot another puppy.
Perhaps the most evil display of deception and murder we are subjected to today are found in the new phenomenon of mass school shootings. Prior to 1999, they were practically non-existent, but today they have almost become predictable. And if you are able to examine the evidence objectively, without getting emotional, a pattern can be recognized. Former Naval Intelligence Officer turned whistleblower Milton William Cooper wrote in his book, Behold a Pale Horse, published in 1991, that the CIA was using drugs and hypnosis on mental patients in order to persuade them to open fire on schoolyards, to inflame the anti-gun lobby, and do away with the Second Amendment. This probably sounds outlandishly evil, and it is, but the evidence is there. In the Columbine shootings of 1999, we are told that Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold acted alone. The town of Columbine, Colorado, was created in 1958 for families and employees of the military-industrial complex. Eric and Dylan were arrested a year prior to the shooting and were allegedly sodomized by the arresting officer, which may sound crazy, but a local officer admitted to raping informants, which is a known method of trauma-based mind control. After this January incident, Eric and Dylan were put into a juvenile diversion program and prescribed SSRI drugs known to cause homicidal ideation. During this time, Eric Harris was making online death threats and bomb threats. Local police were aware of this and drafted a search warrant affidavit, but it was ignored. Eric and Dylan threatened revenge for the January incident in their yearbook. They produced a school video about their plans and began openly collecting weapons. All of this while on probation, and nothing was done about it. During the shootings, the police stood outside the building and did nothing, while the sounds of automatic gunfire and explosions continued for hours. In official transcripts, there are over 100 witnesses who saw more than 2 shooters, and more than 40 witnesses who identified the same 2 men in their 30s, one balding and the other with a short military-style haircut. Several witnesses described the same adult male throwing a pipe bomb on the roof of the library, all of them certain that it wasn't Dylan or Eric. And all of this information pertaining to additional shooters has been redacted. The FBI agent in charge of the Columbine investigation had a son who recently attended the school, who shot a student film inside Columbine High 2 years before the shooting about a character wearing a trench coat shooting up the school. Dylan and Eric fantasized about hijacking an airplane and crashing it into a New York City skyscraper in 1999. Are these just strange coincidences or remnants of the Fed's MK Ultra program? An honest investigation into any of the mass school shootings following Columbine will have the same signatures, such as families involved in the military-industrial complex, prescribed SSRIs and other psychotropic drugs, psychological care provided by the state, and associations with law enforcement prior to the shootings. Just like we saw with the retired federal agent in regular communication with the Buffalo gunman in a private Discord chat room. And in the recent Texas school shooting, how is the perpetrator able to afford nearly $5,000 of weaponry? And why did the police stand down while children were slaughtered? We are still allowed to question these things, but for how long? This evil will never stop until the truth is exposed. And unfortunately, most of us are too emotional to see things as they really are.
Well, first they said it was about 10 minutes that the cops didn't go in and actually do anything about this shooter in a school with children. And then it became 30 minutes, 45 minutes, then 60 minutes, and now 75 minutes they're saying that these cops fucking did nothing while you could hear gunshots going off. No explanation or even addressing why it is nobody tried to so much as sneak a peek in the window of the fucking classroom, let alone take his ass out with the snipers that you had on scene. At first they said the kid got engaged by the resource officer before he went in the school, and then it turned out the resource officer wasn't even there. And the door, was it propped open? No, oh, it was just malfunctioning. There's been more fucking stories than there. The story of what happened here has changed more times than the number of victims. And now they're saying that the dickless police chief, who was the one who commanded everybody not to go in and do everything, wasn't even on fucking scene. And now he got seated as a city council member. He's refusing to speak to investigators or the press. But no, we're not supposed to pay any attention or wonder about that at all. We're just supposed to rehash the same stupid fucking gun control arguments over and over again. And some of the more gutless so-called moderates are saying, oh, well, maybe we should compromise. Well, I've got a compromise for you. See, I think we should have less gun control. I think they should repeal the 1968 Firearms Act and start letting people have their guns back when they get out of jail. If you've served your debt to society, then you should be reinstated as a citizen, because if you get out of prison and you intend to commit more crimes, that law isn't going to stop you from getting a gun and committing crimes. You're already going to be committing a crime. What the fuck do you care if you commit a crime getting the gun? Does that sound extreme? Well, a lot of the shit that's being proposed on the left sounds pretty fucking extreme to me, so how about we compromise? We meet right in the middle, right around nothing. We're going to do nothing and you're going to shut the fuck up. How's that for a compromise? We're meeting in the middle. You want more gun control, I want less. Let's compromise and get nothing. But our senile dipshit puppet president seems to think that this is his best chance of salvaging his approval rating and not getting curb stomped in the midterms. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if we soon see another major shooting event that ends up with a lot more fucking questions than answers. And who is Biden the puppet of? Well, that brings me to my next story. This past week was the annual Bilderberg meeting held in Washington, D.C. this year. The Bilderberg Group is a more secretive version of the World Economic Forum, with Klaus Schwab being heavily involved in both. For decades and decades, they pretended like this meeting didn't exist, and anybody who tried to bring it up and talk about it was just ridiculed as a loony. And then about 15 years ago, they finally started openly acknowledging their existence, but what do they meet about? Well, that's none of your business. Unlike the World Economic Forum's Davos meeting that you can find clips of all over the place online, you're not going to find any video clips of what goes on in this meeting because it's very secret. And they have a website, bilderbergmeetings.org, where you can find a list of participants in this year's meeting, but that's really about all the information you're going to get. But don't worry though, these titans of industry, financiers, senators, heads of state, they're all just meeting so that they can help us and better the world that we live in. They're just there, as they put it, bolstering a consensus around free market Western capitalism and its interest around the globe. It sounds so lovely and legitimate, but it begs the question, if you guys are so benevolent, then why the demand for total secrecy? Sláinte.
All I have in this world is my thoughts and my word, and I don't break them for no one. You understand? So say good night to the bad guy. 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 Come on. Come on.
night.